Did you know that addiction treatment centers are often not the best choice for people who want to overcome their addiction? Well, it's true, and there's a number of reasons for this. The first one has to do with setting people up with false expectations. You see, the word treatment implies a cure, which is misleading because there is no cure for addiction. This misconception is very problematic. When it comes to addiction, it's important to remember the old saying that once a cucumber has become a pickle, it can't go back to being a cucumber again. When a person crosses a line into addiction, they now have a condition that can never be cured and can only be managed. It's kind of like having diabetes. It can't be cured, but it can be managed, and it's important for people to understand this, or they will enter into recovery with the wrong mindset. The second problem is that many of the programs are too short, and this is an issue for a couple of different reasons. First, people often go to treatment programs while they are still detoxing from whatever substance they've been abusing. This means that for the first 3 weeks, those people are unable to absorb much information because they're still detoxing, and this greatly reduces their ability to process and absorb information. Many programs are only 30 days long, so this means that for the first 3 weeks, they basically can't learn a whole lot, and it's really only in the last week of the program that they might be able to process and retain more information. But by then, the program is almost over, and they're sent home and told that they now have all the tools they need to stay clean and sober for the rest of their lives, and this is simply not the case. The reality is that the majority of people who go to treatment programs like that relapse within 2 months of going home. The second reason that short programs are a problem is that recovery from addiction takes a really long time. Think about it. Isn't it completely unrealistic to believe that someone who has developed an addiction over a period of 20 years is going to be able to overcome that issue in just a few weeks? One of the key things that people have to understand about addiction is that underneath the addiction to a substance or a process like gambling, there is a psychological and emotional structure that supports that addiction. In order for someone to overcome their addiction, they have to dismantle this structure, or it's just a question of time before the addiction resurfaces. When they go to a short-term treatment program, the really only thing that they're doing is acquiring some clean time, and they do very little to address the underlying structure that is at the root of their problem. Dismantling this structure takes a lot of work and a lot of time. One of the reasons for this is because people have to face a number of really difficult situations where they might be really tempted to return to using as a way to cope, but instead choose to deal with the situation in a healthy way. Once a person has done that for long enough and often enough, then the old neural pathways in the brain that supported addiction get trimmed, and they establish new healthy neural pathways that support and promote good, healthy coping choices. But it takes a really long time for these new neural pathways to be established. It's not something that can be done in just a few weeks. Until that happens, an addict's brain will constantly be working against them, which means that these changes are absolutely critical. Without them, recovery can't happen. Now, a lot of people with addiction don't really like hearing that because they want to resolve their problem quickly. However, it's important to realize that when we develop an addiction, we become hardwired to seek out instant gratification. In our addiction, if we didn't like how we felt, then we would go out and use our drug of choice, and within a few seconds we felt better. Unfortunately, on a subconscious level, people start to believe that's how things should always work. And when it comes to getting into recovery, they are still looking for a quick fix because they are now conditioned to look for that. One of the fundamental patterns that needs to be broken in order to recover from addiction is this need and desire for quick fixes and instant gratification. As long as a person doesn't tackle that particular pattern head on, they will not be able to overcome their addictive tendencies. This is one of the reasons why programs that are less than a year long are often not very successful at helping people overcome addiction. Residential treatment programs can be helpful, but it's important to understand what they're good for. The main benefit is that they provide short-term stabilization and people can accumulate some clean time. If someone cannot get any clean time any other way, then a residential program is a good option. Being in a secure environment for several weeks can jumpstart a person's recovery, and then they can at least gain a few weeks of clean time and start detoxing from whatever it is they were using. So it can kickstart your recovery, but it's important to remember that that's just the beginning of your healing journey. Unfortunately, many people enter these programs with the expectation that this is going to fix their addiction, and this is absolutely untrue. Here is something that may shock you at first, but after I explain it, it will make sense. Going to a treatment program has never ever cured anyone from an addiction. The reason I say this is because the recovery from addiction happens when a person leaves the program and they make all the necessary changes that they need to in order to break the cycle of addiction and establish a lifestyle that supports long-term recovery. So recovery from addiction doesn't happen while in a treatment program. It happens over the next several years following the beginning of the recovery journey. It's really important to understand that in order to not set yourself up for failure. Another thing to understand about residential treatment programs is that they are invested in making you believe that coming to their program will fix your problem. Like any other business, their success depends on the number of customers they have. Therefore, they're not very motivated to explain to potential clients that coming to their program will only kickstart their recovery, in that the real work happens once they leave the program. The problem with that, once again, is that it causes people to enter these programs with expectations that sets them up for failure, and this is why the recovery rates of these types of programs are very low. Real recovery from addiction happens when a person changes their lifestyle, changes their friends, changes how they spend their time, develops new healthier ways of coping, also changes their beliefs, resets their values, gains the strength to resist all urges, does enough work and growth to regain their integrity, breaks out of denial, and establishes a lifestyle that supports long-term recovery. You can't do all of that in a few short weeks, and you can't do that while being cocooned in a secure environment that is free of temptation. Doing that work takes years, and if you don't fully understand and accept this, then your attempts at recovery will most likely fail. Recovery is not a sprint to the finish line. It is a profound and fundamental shift in values, coping mechanisms, priorities, and lifestyle. It is also an unfolding and ongoing discovery of the very subtle but powerful ways addiction affects a person. Another issue is that most treatment centers don't offer ongoing support once the treatment phase of the program is finished. Failure to make aftercare a core component of a program is setting people up for failure because, as mentioned previously, the real work begins after the initial phases of recovery. So really, the aftercare portion of any program is at least as important, if not more important, than the initial phase. When people are not supported for a sufficient amount of time, then they fail at implementing all the necessary changes that will ensure long-term recovery. Here's a statistic that will help you understand how important this is. In Narcotics Anonymous, the highest relapse rate are people in the first 6 months of recovery, and this is absolutely what we would expect. It makes total sense that when people are first attempting to break an addiction, they struggle more than people who have more clean time. However, what is surprising is that the second highest relapse rate are people who have 3 to 5 years of clean time, and this is not what we would expect. We would think that maybe people who have 6 months to a year might have the second highest relapse rate, but that's not the case. What this tells us is that something happens for people who have 3 to 5 years of clean time, and what that is they take their foot off the gas. They think that they've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now and they're good. They think that they don't need to go to as many meetings or stay as highly focused on their recovery, and this turns out to be, more often than not, a terrible mistake. What I tell my clients is that it takes at least 7 years of hard work to establish not only a lifestyle that supports ongoing recovery, but also establishing coping mechanisms that support a healthy way of dealing with whatever life throws at you. If a person does that well for at least 7 years, then what happens is that the neural pathways in the brain that used to be hardwired for addiction are replaced with neural pathways that support recovery. Then, when something painful, stressful, or difficult happens in their life, their automatic response will not be to think about going out and getting high or drunk, but instead they think about how they can cope with this in a healthy way. In order to get there, a person needs to accumulate many years of experiences of resisting the urge to go out and use and instead employ a healthy coping strategy. And when they do that for long enough, then they have a reasonably good chance of being able to stay clean and sober for the rest of their lives. However, anything short of 7 years is likely to fall short of the mark. So to sum all this up, here is a list of what you should be looking for when considering which program you would like to enter into to help you with your recovery. You want to look for a program that addresses all the misconceptions that set people up for failure, such as an addiction can be cured, or aftercare is not as important as the initial phases of recovery, or that recovery happens quickly. You want to find a program that is strong on all these issues. Finding such a program, whether it is a residential program or not, is more important than anything else. Over my 35 years of experience of helping other people overcome addiction, failure to find a good program has been the primary reason that people fail at their recovery. You also want to look for a program where they teach you all of this in an easy to understand way and clarifies exactly how addiction affects a person and what a person needs to do in order to recover from one. The program should also be long enough so that you can learn enough and make enough changes to give you the best possible chance of beating your addiction. Easy and affordable access to the program is also very important. If you're interested in learning more about the program I offer, you can click the link below. I hope this was helpful to you, and thanks for watching.